In this episode, we're going to talk about New Privacy Guard, GPG, in a way that focuses on purpose and outcomes rather than commands and menus. Beginners often hear about GPG as a mysterious tool that power users love, and they assume it is either too advanced to matter or so strong that it solves every privacy problem automatically. In reality, GPG is a practical way to apply public key cryptography to two main goals: protecting the confidentiality of information through encryption and proving authenticity through digital signatures. The trick is that those goals only work well when you understand what you are trying to achieve, how trust is established, and where people make operational mistakes that quietly undo the benefits. We're going to build a clear mental model of encryption versus signing, what trust means in a GPG context, and why key handling and verification habits matter more than most beginners expect. If you leave this episode with anything, it should be the ability to decide when GPG is the right tool for a job and how to avoid the most common errors that cause security to fail. To start, it helps to separate the two core functions: encryption for confidentiality and signing for authenticity. Encryption is about making content unreadable to anyone who does not have the right key, which protects against eavesdropping and unauthorized access to the message. Signing is about attaching a cryptographic proof that the content came from a specific private key holder and was not altered after it was signed. These are different security properties, and they solve different problems, even though the same key system can support both. Beginners sometimes assume that signing hides content, but signing does not make content secret. It makes content verifiable. They also sometimes assume encryption proves who sent the message, but encryption alone does not necessarily identify the sender unless the system is designed to include that. So a good first mental habit is to say, do I need secrecy? Do I need proof of origin? Or do I need both? And then apply GPG with that goal in mind. GPG relies on asymmetric cryptography, which means you have a key pair consisting of a public key and a private key. The public key is meant to be shared widely because other people use it to encrypt messages to you or to verify signatures that you create. The private key must be protected because it enables decryption of messages meant for you and allows you to create signatures that others will trust as coming from you. The public key is not valuable by itself for secrecy, but it is critical for identity because it becomes the anchor for other people to recognize your signatures as yours. A beginner-friendly analogy is that the public key is like a publicly listed address for receiving sealed letters and verifying your official stamp, while the private key is like the unique stamp and the key to your mailbox. If someone steals your private key, they can read what was meant for you, and they can also impersonate you by producing signatures that look legitimate. The next concept is that GPG is not just about keys. It is about how keys are connected to people through trust. In many environments, trust is centralized, meaning a single organization or authority tells everyone what keys belong to which identities. GPG is often used in a more decentralized trust approach, where individuals decide which keys they trust and why. This is sometimes described as a web of trust, where trust can be built by verifying identities and then endorsing keys. The important beginner point is not the buzzword, but the practical problem. How do you know the public key you found actually belongs to the person you think it belongs to? If you accept the wrong key, you can encrypt secrets to an attacker or accept forged signatures as authentic. So a big part of using GPG safely is adopting a verification mindset rather than treating key exchange as a casual file sharing step. Let's make the key verification problem feel concrete, because this is where many operational mistakes begin. Imagine you want to send a confidential message to a friend, and you download a public key you believe is theirs. If an attacker swapped in their own public key, you would encrypt the message to the attacker and never realize it, because the encryption would still work perfectly. Likewise, if you are verifying a signature and you are using a public key that does not actually belong to the claimed signer, the signature check might still succeed, but it would be verifying the wrong identity. This is why key fingerprints matter, because a fingerprint is a short, unique representation of a key that can be compared through a trusted channel. Beginners sometimes skip this step because it feels inconvenient, but that convenience is exactly what attackers exploit. The goal is to have at least one reliable way to confirm that the key you have corresponds to the real person, not just a name label on the key. Now let's connect this to encryption in practice. Because encryption with GPG is usually aimed at protecting stored data or messages in a way that survives being forwarded or stored on untrusted systems. When you encrypt something to a recipient's public key, you are basically saying only the holder of the corresponding private key should be able to decrypt this. That is powerful, but it also creates responsibility for key management, because if the recipient loses their private key and has no backup, the encrypted content may become unrecoverable. It also creates a confidentiality boundary. The message is protected from outsiders, but not from the recipient or anyone who gains access to the recipient's private key. A common beginner mistake is to treat encryption as a permanent protective label, when it is really a conditional promise based on the ongoing secrecy and availability of the private key. So encryption with GPG is best used when you have a clear understanding of who should be able to read the content and how they will protect their key. Digital signatures with GPG solve a different problem. They provide a way to detect tampering and confirm origin. If you sign a file or message, you are attaching cryptographic evidence that it was created by someone with access to your private key and that the content has not changed since signing. This is extremely useful for verifying software downloads, verifying documents, and confirming that a message really came from the claimed sender. The beginner misconception is that a signature is only useful in formal legal contexts, but in security, it is useful anytime you need to be sure content was not altered in transit or replaced by an attacker. Another misconception is thinking that a signature automatically proves the signer is a good person or that the content is safe. A signature only proves who signed it and that it is intact. You still need judgment about whether you trust that signer and what it means that they signed it. So signing is a trust tool, not a truth machine. A critical operational concept in GPG is key protection on the user side, because your private key is the heart of the system. If you store your private key in an exposed place, if you reuse weak passphrase, or if you leave the key unlocked on an unattended device, you are effectively giving away your identity and your confidentiality. Humans often underestimate how often devices are lost, compromised, or accessed by others, so private key handling must assume accidents and adversaries. Another operational mistake is leaving long-lived keys unchanged for years without thinking about rotation or compromise. Keys are not meant to be forever artifacts, and having a plan for replacement and retirement reduces the damage window if something goes wrong. Beginners also sometimes copy private keys across multiple systems for convenience, which increases exposure because now more devices become targets. The safer mindset is to keep private keys as rare, protected, and well-controlled as possible. Revocation is also part of using GPG with purpose, because you need a way to tell others that a key should no longer be trusted. If you lose control of a private key, even temporarily, you need a way to signal to the community or your contacts that signatures from that key should not be considered valid anymore. In theory, revocation is straightforward. You publish a revocation statement, and others check it. In practice, revocation depends on distribution and verification habits, and not everyone checks status consistently. This means revocation helps most when you already have good communication and key verification practices with the people who rely on your key. For beginners, the key point is that revocation should not be treated as an emergency option you figure out later. It should be part of your key lifecycle plan from the start. Having a way to revoke confidently and communicate quickly reduces confusion and prevents attackers from benefiting from a compromised key. Trust decisions around signatures are another common place where people trip, because GPG can technically verify a signature even when you have not established meaningful trust in the signer's identity. Beginners sometimes see a successful signature verification and assume it means everything is safe, but verification only means the signature matches the public key you used. The real question is whether you have reason to believe that public key truly belongs to the claimed person or organization. This is why people use fingerprints, trusted introductions, or verified key distribution channels. Without that, an attacker can create a key with a familiar name, sign malicious content, and rely on the fact that many users never verified the key identity. So the safe habit is to treat signature verification as a two-step thought process. Does the signature match the key, and do I trust that key to represent the claimed identity? Skipping the second step is one of the most common operational mistakes. Another practical mistake is confusing encryption and signing workflows, which can lead to false confidence. For example, someone might encrypt a message and assume the recipient will know who sent it, but unless the message is also signed, the recipient may not have strong proof of origin. Or someone might sign a file and assume it is protected from being read, but the signature does nothing to hide content. In real workflows, you often want both properties: sign to prove origin and integrity, and encrypt to protect confidentiality. The order and combination matter conceptually, even if we are not discussing commands, because you should think clearly about what the recipient needs to verify and what you want outsiders to be unable to learn. Beginners become safer when they explicitly state, "I want the recipient to know it came from me and has not changed, and I want only the recipient to be able to read it." That statement maps directly to using both signing and encryption in a purposeful way. To close, GPG is most effective when you use it with clear intent and disciplined habits around identity and key handling. Encryption protects confidentiality, but depends on the ongoing secrecy and availability of private keys, while signing protects integrity and proves origin, but depends on trustworthy key identity. Trust is not automatic. It is built through verification of keys, careful handling of fingerprints, and cautious interpretation of what a successful signature check truly means. The biggest failures are usually operational, like accepting unverified keys, exposing private keys, skipping revocation planning, or assuming the tool provides guarantees it was never meant to provide. When you use GPG with purpose, you stop treating cryptography as an on or off switch and start treating it as a set of specific assurances you can achieve when the human and technical parts work together. That mindset will serve you well not only with GPG, but with any system that relies on keys, signatures, and trust.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.